government, and we traveled and we lived different places. And I was born in the United States, but then traveled to France and lived there for a year and a half. And then the president kicked all the Americans out of France, and so then I moved to Germany and lived there for another couple of years. And so I grew up speaking 3 languages: French, German, and English, but all in the same sentence. And no one understood me. So I thought from that point forward, I will only speak one language. So, but I thank you for being here, for allowing me to be here. I'm honored to be here. What do you call it when a person speaks 3 languages? Trilingual. What do you call a person who speaks 2 languages?
Bilingual.
Bilingual. What do you call a person who speaks 1 language? American, a gringo. Thank you.
Model.
So I apologize for not knowing Spanish, but you have a great translator. I feel like he's been my own translator up until this point. Now he's yours. So we are going to speak about integrating Industry 4.0 and the Kaizen culture. And my task is to motivate you and get you to understand that the two are complementary forces. When we first look at integrating Industry 4.0 and the Kaizen culture, many of us have a reaction that the two are not integratable, that it can't be done. They are opposing forces. And as many of the speakers before me have alluded to, my goal is to make sure that we understand that these are complementary forces, and we need to work towards that. Occasionally I run into some operational excellence people who are concerned about the future and what Industry 4.0 will do to them, and will it replace all the work that we've learned and all the strides that we've made over the past couple of decades. Of course it will not, because we will always have people, and as long as there's people, we will always need to have a Kaizen culture, and we will need to develop that. And in fact, we may need it even more because of the perception that people will have that we don't have to do what we've been doing in the past. We don't have to go on a gimbal walk. We don't have to problem solve. This is not necessary because of Industry 4.0, and all of this will be done for us. And the great strides that we have made could be lost. As long as we have people, we will need a Kaizen culture. So, to discuss this more, we talk about the 2 unstoppable complementary forces. And when I talk about unstoppable, they are unstoppable for a couple of reasons. Industry 4.0 is coming. It's here. We've seen it. We've all seen it. And it's going to keep continuing. The Kaizen culture is an unstoppable force as long as we have people, and the need to use people's minds and skills and respect the minds and skills of all the individuals that are working within our organization. We will still need to have it. And both of those working together, not opposing forces, but together, will lead to greater quantum leaps like we had during the first revolution, during the second revolution, and during the third revolution. These will let us enjoy quantum leaps in productivity, quality, and of course, allowing us greater throughput and flexibility. So how do we put this together? How do we bring them together? What are the examples of bringing them together? So first we have to discuss what is what is Industry 4.0? It is, of course, the buzzword of today. We know about it, we've heard about it, it's coming. It originated from the high-tech strategy sessions that were held in Germany, within the German government, to move forward, to surpass competing nations, to move at such a rate that it'll leave other nations in the dust. And the work members were recognized as the founders of IO 4.0. It is recognized as the 4th Industrial Revolution. And of course, we've seen slides like this throughout this morning, discussing the different revolutions. We started off with the first revolution of water and steam. allowing the agricultural industry to grow, to prosper. Mechanization that allowed us to travel across the country. Locomotion, other forms of transportation. It was a huge industrial revolution. Then we moved on to industrial revolution number 2. The second one, mass production. Assemblies, electricity. This is a big part, this is where Henry Ford started. And Henry Ford, as we all know, was one of the main initiators, one of the main founders of what we call Kaizen today, of what we call lean today. His goal, his dream, was to ensure that everyone could afford to purchase a car. Even those people who produced the cars, manufactured the cars. His goal was to be able to get to the point to allow them to afford to buy those same very cars. But back in those early days, of course, cars were manufactured in a garage-type environment. And as you study the operation, people realize that you can't manufacture a vehicle, a product this complex in a garage where operators would go and fetch parts, gather parts from different areas. As you study this, Henry Ford realized that this is crazy. These people who are such the key people in adding value to the product are spending half their time or more of the time retrieving parts. This doesn't make sense. And that's when he realized the parts must come to the car. The assembler must be there at the car. They must not waste their time in transportation and motion. It must be there, border of line. So back then, we had this second revolution. The revolution of mass assembly, assembly line electricity. But it worked hand in hand with the early concepts of what we now call lean. They worked hand in hand together. Then the third revolution began, focused on computers and automation, robotics. I started my career with the Saturn Corporation of General Motors. Some of you may remember the Saturn Corporation. It was a new division within GM. It was all the rage. It was a big deal. And I was lucky enough and very fortunate to graduate from college and start at the Saturn Corporation. And I can remember learning about such things as the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award. It's a big deal in the United States. Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award. And around that time, one of the assembly plants at GM had won the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award. That plant was called Hamtramck in Detroit. And it's kind of an interesting story as to how they won that award, because their results were astounding. It was fantastic. Quality just shot up like a rocket. Productivity was fantastic. Well, part of that was because prior to that, the dream at Hamtramck was to almost replace most of the human beings and use complete robotics. So robots were brought in by the dozens to the facility. And following that, they realized tremendous productivity losses and quality losses. They tried to focus in on improving processes and their quality systems by bringing in automation and robotics and replacing human beings. They realized it wasn't working. Hamtramck had some of the worst results of any plant within GM. And so from that point on, they started to use robotics more conscientiously. Where are they best used? Where are they not best used? And put human beings back to work in the areas where they should be working, where they could work better than a robot. That's why Hamtramck's quality records and results soared. It was after they turned from robotics and automation to a more balanced approach. But the two needed to work hand in hand. It was realized that we need computers and automation and robotics to work with people. The two were seen as complementary forces. At Kaizen, we believe that we must also always Kaizen first and invest second. Still our approach. It should be anyone's approach. Look for the improvements to the process first, invest secondarily. So during the third revolution, we realized that the two are complementary forces. The Kaizen way, Kaizen approach, Kaizen culture, and automation. Now we face the same dilemma as we go through the fourth generation, the fourth industrial revolution, cyber-physical systems. It's going to be the same story. We will still have people, and with people we will need a Kaizen culture. So we need to understand what a cyber-physical system is, and how we can benefit from it, and how to integrate that into a lean culture. But we need to make sure that we don't repeat the mistakes of like a Hamtramck plant, and that we understand the technological experts and the operational experts together, work together to understand each of each other's strengths and have an integrated approach that will be beneficial to all. So what does Industry 4.0 actually consist of? Well, it consists of, as you know and you've heard, many different parts. Machines exchanging information, data, amongst themselves, upstream and downstream processes. If there's a problem with one machine and it goes down, it might affect the logistics. It might affect what a material handler does. A notification is received. It might affect mating parts. It might affect the production of mating parts. It might affect maintenance and predictive maintenance, and what maintenance should occur at that point in time, or at some later point in time. And then take that data, accumulate that data, analyze the data so that it's understood when the next potential downfall or problem may occur. Machines exchanging information and data with people in real time. I mean, real time has always been the dream. I'm sure many of you are involved in organizations that use statistical process control, SPC. SPC's been around for a long time. Dr. Deming, the great late Dr. Deming, preached statistical process control many years ago. In many organizations, we don't do it right. The data is looked at afterwards, after the fact. So it's not in real time. But the goal, as we know, was always that data related to statistical process control is analyzed in real time. We just haven't done a good job with that in many cases. Machines in Industry 4.0 will be able to ensure that we look at out of control points and we adjust machines and we adjust other machines and other processes upstream and downstream of the process, and people will get that data and understand that data, and there'll be some type of alert system, if you will, to ensure that everyone knows when we have an out of control condition. Components themselves will report data on where they are in the process so that we know exactly where all of our components, all of our parts, all our materials are located throughout the process. And this might affect the production of other materials and other components, and affect the amount of parts or materials that are brought to the assembly line. Because the components and the materials will talk to themselves. And they'll understand information about where they go next and when they go there next. It's like a giant machine, a giant system of communication that we can all react, parts, components, and so forth, machines can all react under the given conditions and do what's right for the overall process. Control programs will then react when machines fail. They'll react perhaps by maintaining themselves or communicating with other machines in order to pick up production or slow down production, as it will. And finally, parts and programs and people like in the case of a hospital, will understand how to process, where they are in the process, with little to no human intervention. Those are the components of Industry 4.0. That's what it consists of. Why does it exist? Well, quite simply, it exists because of our competitive needs. To serve our customers better, faster, and lower cost. To provide our customers with more flexibility. Smaller volumes, higher complexity, and also to reduce waste, all of the waste, whether it's defects, overproduction, inventory, and to make your processes more lean. That's why it exists. I know you know that. That's not rocket science. We all understand that. But there's a reason why I put this slide up here. And you'll see the exact same words a little bit later, because it should sound familiar. Now, with regard to Kaizen and a Kaizen culture, what does Kaizen mean? It means to change for the better, or to break apart to make better, or to cause disruption. Kaizen is about developing habits of improvement, developing habits of analyzing data, developing habits of coaching people the right way so that they learn and we respect their minds and their skills. It takes a lot of practice. It's a skill. It takes a lot of perseverance. But it's something that we try to do. So that's Kaizen. Now, what is a Kaizen culture? Well, Kaizen culture, which is what we're trying to integrate with Industry 4.0, is that long-term based business excellence system that creates a sustainable competitive advantage. That's what we're trying to do. But it's people-based. Toyota said, and many of the CEOs and C-suite individuals within Toyota over the decades have said that we are in the business of growing people. We are in the business of maturing people, leadership. This is a business excellence system, and as long as we have people, we will need a business excellence system that's focused on people. Kaizen culture is also a work environment in which all employees every day work to eliminate waste. It's about continuous improvement, not continual improvement. There's a little bit of a difference between the two. A continuous improvement is making those improvements every single day. Everybody, the little improvements, the small improvements that we all can make. Continual improvement is more periodic in nature. Once in a while, we'll do a project, a Kaizen event, once a month. And companies say they're doing lean, they're doing Kaizen, but they're really not. Not until they get to the point of doing continuous improvement on an everyday basis. And that's the core. That's the foundation of a Kaizen culture, is every single person making those improvements every single day. But it's also constantly focused on the process. Now there's a lot of hardware systems, software systems, programs, Internet of Things. Anything that we have out there that's electronic in nature may not necessarily be process focused. It still may be department focused or metric focused. What I'm saying is there's a lot of tools out there, a lot of things out there that we could use. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's process focused. At the core of the Kaizen culture is to be constantly focused on the process. We may not do that with technology alone. It's about respect and involvement of all the people. One of the key principles within the Kaizen culture is respecting and involving all the people. My fear is that with Industry 4.0, we could get away from that. We could. Because, as I said earlier, we tend to think, that Industry 4.0 and all of its elements will fix our problems. It'll address all of our problems. We don't have to do these things anymore. We don't have to solve our problems. That's not true. We will always have problems. As Sebastian said in the previous conversation, the previous speech, is that things change all the time. It's not a stable, static environment. We know this. Things change all the time. How do we react to that? Human beings must react to that and address those issues. To do so effectively, we must respect the minds, the skills of all individuals working within the organization. And finally, it's about creation of flow. This is the Kaizen culture, the creation of constant flow. Again, technology by itself does not necessarily mean that it will respect flow. The technological experts that truly know about Industry 4.0, first need to understand the concepts and the principles by which we abide to see how it all fits in together. They need to understand about the constant elimination of waste, the respect for people. All of these things are important to an overall effective functioning system. So what we try to do, of course, is create flow. We do that by the elimination of non-value added. I know you know this. You've probably seen this many times in many other forms. But what we have here is a large process. A process that's full of value-added and non-value-added activities. In red are the non-value-added activities. When we try to create flow and eliminate non-value-added activities, we identify those and we say, okay, how do we get rid of them? How can we mesh? How do we eliminate or modify or decrease the amount of non-value-added activities? And then bring it all together. Okay, so you know this. This is nothing new. It all goes back to the origins of the Toyota Production Company. I mean, back in the late 1940s, after the war, one of the major Toyota plants was bombed severely. Toyota was on the brink of declaring bankruptcy. They had offers from the Japanese government and the US government of loans, but that went against their grain. They've never believed in being reliant on another source. They believed in being self-reliant. And they said that the only way we can do this is to get ourselves out of this. And to do that, we have to manage our company like you all manage, and I manage my home. Money comes in and money goes out. I want more money coming in than goes out. And the timing has to be right. So how do we do that? They looked at this timeline that's similar to the drawing that you saw up here. And they said, okay, we have this process, this long process. And we need to get paid by the customers of our cars before we pay the suppliers of the materials that went into that car. That's our goal, to get paid by the customers buying our cars before we pay the suppliers of the materials that go into the car. How do we do that? We constantly shrink. Constantly identify the waste along the process and constantly shrink. Okay? Now, that's the past. That's what happened. That's how we got to this point. So what about now? We're still trying to do the same thing. Industry 4.0 can help us do this. It's still the same goal, is to get rid of all the non-value-added activities. But what a technological expert might think of non-value-added might be different than what you think and what I think as an operational expert as non-value-added. We need to have this process focused. We need to be properly aligned. We need to be working together to ensure that we have complementary forces, or they are complementary forces. And all of this, of course, will result in great things, as you know, like less stock, reduced complexity, reduced costs, higher flexibility, better quality and service. And all of our measures will go in the right direction for growth, quality, cost, delivery, and motivation of the people. It will just be greatly enhanced if we integrate Industry 4.0 into the Kaizen way of thinking, into a Kaizen culture. Not necessarily lead the effort, because that can happen. But the lead of the effort of improvement should always be development of the Kaizen culture, and improvement of the people, and development of the people. And Industry 4.0 is only a tool that's only going to enhance that. So why does a Kaizen culture exist? To serve customers better, faster, and at a lower cost. To provide customers with their specific needs and increase flexibility. To get rid of waste, all the waste, and to make your processes more lean. It's the same slide I showed before when I said, why does Industry 4.0 exist? They have the same purpose. They have the same goal. They should be integrated. It's all about integration. You know, in my past, I've done a lot of work with Lean, of course, Kaizen. I've done a lot of work with quality management systems. So helping companies develop ISO 9001 systems. I'm a Six Sigma black belt. You know what always drove me crazy? Is that you would have different departments in companies that are responsible for Six Sigma and Lean and ISO 9001 and quality management systems when they all have the same purpose. That's wasteful. That's wasteful. And yet, we are the ones, the operational experts are the ones that are talking about getting rid of waste. Sometimes we have to clean up our own house. I wrote a book one time called Lean ISO 9001, the integration of the two. I see this as the same thing. We need to look at, every time we introduce something new, we shouldn't just let it be introduced and bring it into the organization as a new entity. We should say, where does it fit in? Where does it make sense? Where does it overlap with what we're doing right now? And this is an example of that. I can imagine some companies saying, we're going to have an Industry 4.0 expert and a department. And then we don't integrate it with our own Lean experts. That in itself is wasteful. And shame on us if we allow it to happen. So the little photo on this picture is trying to demonstrate, let's bring the two together. Let's make them one. How do we do that? What are examples of that? So, we have our traditional way of innovation versus the Kaizen way. I have a nice little graph here. It shows on the bottom a traditional method or traditional way of improvement. And you see that we make some jumps and we go through perhaps another event or improvement exercise, or maybe we automate and we have another little jump. Now, in the traditional method, our focus was on the third transformation, the third revolution, automation. And again, we've always said, well, automation by itself doesn't do it. Again, we should be focusing in on Kaizen first, investment second, or automation second. And automation would focus in on some of our value-added activities and try to improve cycle times of our value-added activities. And so the improvements that we oftentimes got was very little. And so that's what you see in the graph. Very little improvement, but still nonetheless improvement. Because we were not focused on the non-value-added activities. If we focus in on non-value-added activities, we have much better results. The Kaizen way takes the approach of doing just that. Let's focus in on all of our non-value-added activities. So in the slide, what you see in a blue circle there, the blue circle shows, prior to the blue circle, you see a big quantum improvement, a Kaizen event, maybe a value stream mapping, followed by several Kaizen events. A big quantum improvement. And then as you see within the circle, is the variability being reduced. Variability is being reduced, and at the high end of the performance within the blue circle. How do we do that? Well, we do that through our constant Kaizen, our daily Kaizen, everyday Kaizen. Whether they're huddle meetings, visual management, constant improvement, standard development. And we have this improvement that continues on. And then we go through and we stabilize, and we have a process that is now stable, and we say, you know what, it's time to make another quantum leap. And we're going to do that through a breakthrough Kaizen. Or again, value stream mapping, successive Kaizen events. We're going to make that improvement, and then our daily Kaizen is going to stabilize once again. That's our approach. That's the approach that we all take today. Leaders Kaizen is important too. Leaders Kaizen from the perspective of what is the leader's responsibility? How are they involved in value stream mapping and their involvement in Kaizen events? How do they go to the Gemba? How do they coach their people?
How do they challenge their people respectfully? How do we teach people in a standard way? How do we make sure that all of our events, all of our improvement activities are tied to our strategic objectives? That's Leaders Kaizen. And then we have Support Kaizen. And Support Kaizen is all about, well, what's that foundation within the organization? Who's our mentors? Who's our coaches? Who's our facilitators? Who's going to make sure that we're getting value out of all of this and that we improve the improvement process? That's through Support Kaizen. Those are the elements. And it's much better than the old way of improvement. So why do I show you this? Well, the question is, where does Industry 4.0 fit in? Where does it fit into this model? And I would say primarily Industry 4.0 is going to fit in when we do Kaizen events and when we do value stream mapping. And our focus will be, number one, to improve the process, but then secondarily, we will also focus on Industry 4.0 techniques. That's where it can help. Now, Industry 4.0 can also assist in our daily Kaizen efforts with the data that we receive, the reaction inputs that we receive so that we are alerted properly. But it's not a big influencer. It is an influencer. It's primarily an influencer on our breakthrough Kaizens, our value stream mapping, our Kaizen events. Now, I put this chart up here to show you that breakthrough Kaizen by itself is going to be helpful in that regard. But it doesn't have very much to do with our daily Kaizen habits. It doesn't have very much to do with our leaders' Kaizen habits. And it doesn't have very much to do with our support Kaizen habits. It is a cog, a very important cog, something that will help in our efforts to increase year-over-year quality improvements, productivity improvements, etc. But it's not a replacement, by no means. The four elements become important of daily Kaizen, breakthrough Kaizen, leaders Kaizen, support Kaizen. They're all necessary. Industry 4.0 will primarily help us with breakthrough Kaizen and helping us to deliver and get us to our overall strategy, what we're trying to achieve, big picture. So it's the combination of the two, the Kaizen culture and Industry 4.0. These should be looked at as complementary forces, requiring collaboration, absolutely requiring and mandating collaboration. They have the same goal. Let's not be wasteful in our efforts. We need to work together to strive towards the same things. Now, what kind of collaboration is required? I use the general term of operational experts or operation excellence experts. It could be a Kaizen leader, value stream manager. But these people need to embrace the change of Industry 4.0. Use those new technologies to our advantage. Keeping in mind the concepts that we believe, because we know that the concepts and the principles that we know and breathe and have been doing now for many years are proven. And they're necessary. We need collaboration to ensure adaptability and flexibility within the overall system. We need to ensure collaboration is there to embrace technology during value stream mapping to attain those breakthrough improvements and even greater improvements that we've experienced up until this point. In many of my value stream maps that I do with organizations, I've always required in the past couple of years that someone from IT must be involved. Sub-technological experts must be involved throughout the entire process. In almost every project I work on, there will be a number of actions for that group. And so that's part of the collaboration up front and the understanding up front. But I always make sure that they understand it's the process that comes first. It's the process that comes first, improving the process before investing. We need to make those technological experts mandatory involvement. And the operational experts, us, in here, we need to advise. We need to advise. We need to take charge of understanding why we do have a need for technology, that it can't be done another way. Who collaborates with whom? That's part of our responsibility to ensure that we see that collaboration and which of the technologies that we know is needed and how. But we need to gain understanding of what those technologies are. What are the capabilities? And is this the best approach for an overall system? As operational experts, we have certain skills. We have to understand that we have certain skills that technological experts may not have. And those skills include seeing waste. We know seeing waste is a skill. I know it is. It's a skill I'm still trying to develop. And I will always try to develop it. I feel like sometimes, if you haven't done a project at home, has anyone done a project, a lean project at home? Yes? Not too many. There's a few of you. But I would challenge you, because sometimes when you start to really feel like you're seeing waste, you see it at home all the time. It's hard not to see. I did a video some time ago about doing the laundry in our home. I brought in 2 camera people and a lighting person. My wife loved it. She didn't love it. But we filmed the laundry process. And we identified all kinds of waste. And I made a whole bunch of improvements. And now I do my own laundry. That was one of the downsides. But I have a better process, I think. I know I do. So, seeing waste is a skill. And technological experts may have no clue. We have to know that we have a skill. And it is a skill that has been honed. And they may not have it. So we have to honor that and be proud of the fact that we have that skill and to teach it to our technological experts. We know about people systems. We know about things like coaching and getting the best out of people, and asking hard questions by challenging people's minds. We know about respect and involvement. Every single tool in the Lean kit, the Lean toolkit, is about respect and involvement. That's the core, that's the basis of it. We know about visual management systems and the importance of visual management systems and how we learn better and we retain information and knowledge better with visual management systems. And that could be on the physical side, but it also could be in the cyber side. What visual management systems do we have electronically in our networks? With our programs, our databases, our registries. Visual management systems apply to those areas as well. We know about change management. We know about what people want. We know that the purpose, as Shigeo Shingo said, the purpose of continuous improvement is to make everyone's lives easier